A very warm welcome to Ultimate Pool Extra. It's been another very big week in the Ultimate Pool world. We've had 3 shows this week. We've had the pairs, we've had the Masters, and the Miniseries as well. And even Scott and I had a little match-up ourselves, which we will talk about, because joining me as ever is Scott Ryan. Scott, it's been a great week this week. Not only because I managed to beat you 5-0, but also there was a lot going on with everything else in the Ultimate Pool world.
Probably one of the worst weeks of my life, if I'm being brutally honest, but I was a little bit under the weather, if we want to talk about that a little bit later. Another incredible week. I was lucky enough to be at the Daventry event, which, again, they're really brilliant events in terms of the vibe and in terms of kind of the atmosphere around the place. And also getting to see some of the great players of yesteryear, as well as giving the ladies a showcase, which was absolutely incredible to be a part of. You and I got to do a little stint in the commentary box. The less said about that, the better. And this week, in terms of our picking battle, it was a pretty awful week all round.
Yeah, it's not gone well for you on a few fronts this week, but it has been great fun for me and for Ultimate Pool. Before we introduce our guest this week, though, I just want to quickly touch on the fact we were both at an Ultimate Pool experience night this week as well, which was absolutely fantastic. Carl Morris and Gareth Potts putting on a show, but also we had a great crowd there, and those Ultimate Pool experience nights, they're very interactive and a lot of fun to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely incredible atmosphere all evening at Haley's Comet in Milton Keynes, headed up by a wonderful landlady called Anna, who was very much involved in the evening, in particular with a very dangerous Carl Morris trick shot, which, I think it had all the people from Ultimate Pool searching for the insurance documents because it looked pretty dangerous. But a phenomenal evening all round. Unfortunately, I lost my 100% record against Gareth Potts, which again, this has been like an awful week for me all around. But a massive shout out to young Jordan Hutchinson, who's a lad who's got cerebral palsy, who he didn't let that stand in the way, did he, Simon?
No, I had quite a few long chats with him, and I've been fortunate enough to cover a lot of Paralympic sports and a lot of disabled sports. And the one thing that's common across the board is the fact that they don't care. They just want to enjoy their sport and win their sport. And that's what you had with Jordan. He didn't care. He just wanted to go out there and play pool. He had his own way of playing, which was amazing to see. He got involved with the 6-red shootout. He played a frame. He also did the best trick shot of the night. He was a great lad. Hopefully we get to see him again, because he was absolutely fantastic.
He was a lot better player than you and I were when we played our match in Daventry.
There's no doubt about that. We won't be showing that at all. All we're going to talk about is the score. We won't be showing any of the footage.
Please don't.
No, absolutely not. Okay, let's get our guest onto the show then. We've had the World Championship winner, but let's bring in the World Championship runner-up, Chris Day. Great to have you on the show. And it's sorry to talk about a loss straight off the bat, Chris, but for me, your run to the World Championship final was absolutely fantastic. And it sort of, even though I've known you for a long time, I've seen you sort of progress as a player, it sort of announced yourself to a lot of people, I think, that week in Ireland.
I guess it did, really. It was a little unexpected from my part, probably a lot unexpected from the pool world's part. But I have been putting in a lot of hours. I have been trying some new stuff, trying to implement it as best as I can. And it's encouraging that I'm getting the results from that, to be honest.
At what point during the week in Ireland did you think, hang on a minute, there's something on here? Because whilst I've spoken to you a lot and you're talking about how much hard work you're putting in on the practice table and the games there, you weren't just winning matches. You were taking people apart match after match after match. And we're talking about great players, and you were sort of putting them away with ease. There must have been a moment that sort of dawned on you and was like, hang on a minute, I'm playing well enough to win this title.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I got through the qualifiers. I just sort of chopped my way through them, to be honest, because it's just about winning really, and getting to the main bit. But when I had my first match against Eddie Barker, I played really well. I think I won 8-3, but I don't think Eddie had many more than the 3 chances and the frames he won. So I knew I was playing really well. We had a good setup all week. I was obviously rooming with Sean Story, as I often do, and we just had a routine. To be honest, he would put up and practice early in the morning if he was on. We were practicing down a bit late at night and have a lay-in. We were sort of exercising in the gym. We were eating well. Everything was just working its way to giving ourselves the best opportunity to play well. And luckily, I got the chances and I did play well. So.
Incredible run. Also incredible to hear the sort of professionalism from both Sean and yourself there. That's unusual for the pool world. Scott, we've talked about Ronan McCarthy quite rightly a lot over the last few weeks, but you can't understate the sort of run that Chris put on there at the World Championships. For the outside world, it probably was a little bit out of the blue, but I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, let's be brutally honest, Simon. He wasn't in either one of our thoughts when we made our picks, but he deserved to be there. But for a couple of dodgy rolls that didn't go his way, he made his way well back into that match when he had a really bad start. And I just think he was maybe 1 or 2 frames away from really scaring Ronan and kind of making a bigger match of it. But how much richer from the experience of going to a huge event like that and reaching the final. And I guess it must bode well for you, Chris, for the rest of the event this season.
Yeah, it does. To be honest, I was really happy with the way I played throughout the whole tournament. I was especially happy with my attitude in the final, to be honest, because obviously it was the biggest final I'd played in my career. Often people talk about nerves, and there's good nerves and there's bad nerves, and I was just really, really happy that I had the good nerves. I was really happy that I was ready to win, basically. As luck had it, I didn't actually get the chance near winning, but if I answered, I felt like I was ready. So from that side of it, I couldn't do any more, really.
We've seen you obviously this week come through the pairs as well, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But one of the things I took away from the pairs and obviously the World Championships is the level of confidence you're playing with. There's an inner belief. Watching you, it looks like you really do believe that you are capable and that you are going to take out these finishes. And with that in mind, with the confidence you're now playing with, we go into the Pro Series in a week or so's time. You need a deep run if you want to get into that top 28. But I guess you're probably going there not as worried about the top 28 and more thinking, I'm playing well enough to win.
Yeah, pretty much. That is my mindset. I mean, you could never really go into a tournament with the players that are on show in the ultimate pool thinking you are going to win, because obviously that would be quite silly. But there's a difference between going there and playing and going there and knowing that you can win. And my mindset is now going there and thinking that I'm going to be right in the mix. So, I could also lose in the first round twice and still do nothing wrong. So, but I am definitely going there with a mindset that I can win, and that's going to be my aim as much as it can be.
Yeah, it must be a cool feeling. I like the way you worded it. You're ready to win if you get that opportunity, and you don't always get that opportunity in the pool world. But I guess, Scott, we're going to have some picks next week when we come to the Pro Series. We probably can't overlook Chris too much.
No, why would you? He's he's gone out. He's done exceptionally well in the World Championships, and obviously, despite I heard you had a back injury for the pairs on Monday evening, but you played exceptionally well.
Yeah, I had a little bit of an injury. I actually got off the running machine and went to put the running machine away and pulled a muscle in my back putting the running machine away. So, I went 3 or 4 days in pain, but when I saw the physio, he managed to put everything back and said, you might be in a bit of discomfort, but you'll be fine in a few days. And luckily, that's how it was. So I had some painkillers, and I was only really able to practice for probably a couple of hours the day before. But I got through that fine. Sean and I got up there in good time, like we always do, and we had a good practice session. And it went from there really. But we played as well as we are in practice on the table, and that's all you can ask for, really.
Yeah, but beware the injured sportsman. Not. I also love the fact that you've done your back in putting your running machine away. To me, that just says that that you shouldn't be doing any exercises. You're destined to hurt yourself if you do. Talk
Yeah.
to me about the pairs. Talk to me about the pairs then, Chris, because obviously you came through 6 red shootout. I thought it was a great night. Actually, I thought that a number of you played really, really well. There were some great finishes between a bunch of you, but there was a calmness about you and Sean, especially when it came to that 6 red shootout, which I just thought you almost, to me, it highlights the effort you guys put in. You were prepared for whatever was going to happen that night. You were prepared for however the matches panned out, whether there was going to be a draw as there was, or whether it was a loss or a win here or there. And you just knew that you just have to keep battling away. And that 6 red shootout, it was the calmest 6 red shootout. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, we were happy to be in that situation. I mean, going into a 6 red, we're probably as confident as you can be. Obviously, we know it's still a bit of a lottery. We know people are capable of posting really, really quick times. But if we're being honest, if we can put anyone in first and they post a time sort of probably above 22 or 23, we're fairly comfortable that we can probably beat that. Sort of maybe 8 out of 10. Just for the practice we've put in. We know we've got a couple of types of breaks without giving too much away, but if we had a really quick time to beat, we would have used a different break. But the fact that we had what we thought was a slower time to beat, we made sure of what we needed to do on the break so we could pot 6 balls and win.
Well, I want to show you there's 2 6 red shootouts. Also, Jez Graham and Greg Batten, they go first, and we see it so often with people. You can get quite scrambled minds out there, and things can get away from you because their break is pretty good here. They're a little bit unlucky with their second shot, but then it seemed to just get away a little bit frantic.
Yeah, it was. I think it was. Yeah, Jez got just a bit stuck on the second ball. But yeah, after that, they sort of looked in good shape here. But I think Jez missed a trick here because he could have potted the ball in the middle and potted the ball over the hole in the same shot, and that would have probably taken 4 or 5 seconds off the time.
So with clever thinking that. So with that in mind, I want to show you your second shot after the break because Sean kind of he dogs that shot a little bit, gets lucky to make that one. But your calmness here, I thought, was fantastic. You took an extra second, just kind of worked it out. Once you made that one, it was almost guaranteed. It was such a fantastic bit of poise.
Yeah, I mean, I knew I needed to make the pot first and foremost, and I knew the cue ball was going into the sort of 3 or 4 reds that we had up there. So once I'd made the pot and seen where the cue ball had landed, obviously we were absolutely plumb. So I had a little look at the clock before potting the last red, and as I was sort of walking around to it, I saw 19 seconds on the board. So I thought, no need to rush, just cue it in like a normal shot, make sure you pot it, and that's job done, really.
Is it only hours of practice, though, and doing it with a partner as well, because for the pairs, that allows you to have that sort of clear thought? Because both you and Sean have got pretty good records in 6 red shootouts, of that there's no doubt, but it's not as easy as you guys make it look.
No, it's a really difficult skill, to be honest. I think it's as you know, I dabble a lot with various breaks just for the normal game. So I've got 2 or 3 for the 6 red as well. Depending on sort of what times I think I've got to beat. There's certain breaks where you can take a bit of risk to get a reward if you want to chuck a quick time in, but it might end up a couple of balls go up the table with that break, so you could end up with a 40-seconder if you get it wrong. Like I said, if you're chasing a 30-second time, the break that we used on Monday is absolutely fine because with that break there's a chance that 3 balls stay in a cluster in the middle. But you can waste a shot and get those out and still post a really good time. So, yeah, I mean, we practice it individually. And when we come together to practice it, we normally sort of stick a good half an hour, 40 minutes on the day, just sort of getting in each other's rhythm and finding out who's going to break and where the balls are going to lie.
Scott, when we hear that from from Chris. Can we be critical of other players? And I'm not being critical of Jez and Greg at all. I'm just, there's a few players that are sort of openly against the 6 red shootout, tell us they don't practice it, look like they don't practice it when they play in it. And, you know, just by putting a few hours in, it just helps you to be a little bit calmer out there and less frantic.
Listen, I can't get my head around it. For me, it's just pure stupidity and ignorance if you're not going to practice it. And the reason why, it's akin to, I've said it before, a footballer not practicing penalty kicks and then wondering why they miss one at a pivotal time. There's money on this. There's big prize money to be won. So if you're in a position where you might find yourself in a 6 red shootout, why wouldn't you give yourself the very best opportunity to win the money by giving yourself that practice and understanding kind of how like Chris has rightly said, and you know, I'm lucky. I've seen a lot of people play 6 red shootouts on a podcast table at events, and there are many different breaks. There are many different ways to attack a 6 red shootout, particularly if it goes wrong as well. And that's kind of as Chris alluded to, Jez had an opportunity to pop 2 balls in one goes, which would have probably put the lads under a bit more pressure had they been facing a 26-25 second time. If you're not practicing a 6 red shootout and it is a fundamental part of that tournament, then you've kind of got to question yourself. You can't argue if it goes wrong. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I just think it's stupidity if you don't practice it.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree. Chris, I guess you're happy if players don't, because you'll put the time in. I always say on commentary that you and Sean are always looking for those 1%, those little advantages. And if you're putting the time in and others aren't, I guess that's to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it only seemed like probably a year and a half ago that people were still not really practicing the break shot, which I found crazy, considering it's probably the most important shot in the game, to be completely honest with you. Because if you can break and, you know, control the white ball and leave dollies every time, it doesn't really matter who you're playing on, you know, who's sitting there in the chair holding their cue. You're going to win more often than not. And yeah, there were a lot of people that just sort of practiced, but then turned up and were really surprised that they, you know, weren't hitting the break right or weren't getting good splits. And yeah, it just seems bizarre to me.
Yeah, and me. One last question about the 6 red. How much do you like to kind of wind Sean up about the fact that his only ever loss on the Ultimate Pool stage was to you on a 6 red shootout?
Oh, we never bring it up at all, Simon. Obviously.
I'll bring it up for you then, Chris.
Sean
does have the most wins, but his only loss was to you. Let's mention it here on Ultimate Pool Extra. Okay, let's bring in the Scott. It's that time, picking battle time. It's not going to go well for you here. We are running out of days, running out of competitions for you. Let's update the scores. I have the winning pair. It takes me 26-23 in front, 3 clear, and we are running out of time for you. But Scott, you do get first pick this week in the Pairs Cup. And let's show you this week's group, because it's another cracker, as they are all going to be in the second stage of the competition. Gareth Potts and Mark Selby are back in action. Andy Blurton and Neil Rayburn, they lost 4-0 in their opening match and came back through to win via a 6 red shootout. And then we've got Scott Gillespie and Jamie Burnett and Dylan Leary and Matt Cook complete the lineup. All the action at 6:30 on Monday. Talk us through your thinking here then, Scott.
Well, it's not a particularly pleasant group to pick first from, really, is it? Because no matter who picks first, all four teams can win. You know, I think that the Dylan Leary, Matt Cook team is a phenomenal team. Previously, I backed Scott Gillespie and Jamie Burnett. Neil Raybone and Andy Blurton, another unbelievable team. You've got Potts and Selby again, another dream team. So I'm actually torn between 3, which is bad, really. I know that the obvious choice is to go for Gareth Potts and Mark Selby, because they are a formidable pairing, and you'll know that they'll be putting the time in and the effort in. And again, you know, much akin to what we saw last week, when you've got a cohesive team that understand and knows each other inside out. It makes for a better experience from a doubles perspective. I'm also, I really like Dylan Leary and Matt Cook as well. Again, they're guys I've picked previously, so I'm really torn. Listen, I've got nothing to lose really. I'm checking out swimming trunks online as we speak. I am going to go for Scott Gillespie and Jamie Burnett in that group.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that actually. I thought for all your talk, I thought you were still going to go and pick Gareth and Mark. I think Gareth and Mark are the favourites, but it is in the Pairs Cup. I don't think you can have much in the way of favourites. I thought Chris, you were favourite with Sean last week, but it's such a fine line. I was actually trying to work out which one of the other three, assuming you went for Gaz and Mark, I was going to go for. I hadn't made my mind up, but I am going to go for Gaz and Mark. You've left that open for me, and I can't really turn it down. It'd be interesting to see because I think it's going to be a close one to call, but I can't not pick them. So Gaz and Mark for me. Chris, I'm not going to ask you to have a pick because it's not that wouldn't be right because you are obviously going to be playing the winners of this Monday. What I want to ask you about the fact is, obviously, I've always asked, do players have a preference who they play in the finals? Nobody ever answers that question, but let me ask you it this way around: how much more, or how much would you enjoy having the extra eyeballs or the extra exposure that having someone like Mark Selby in potentially a Pairs Cup final might bring? Do you think is that something you'd really embrace and enjoy?
Yes, basically that's with no disrespect to the other teams in the group, but I'd really love for Gaz and Mark to win, purely from a selfish point of view, because I think it would be a brilliant atmosphere in their club on finals night, playing against them in the semi-finals. So yeah, I firmly want them to get through so we can have a bash.
Yeah, no, okay. Well, I firmly want them to get through now that I've picked them. Okay, so that is the Pairs Cup on Monday at 6:30. Make sure you tune in on the Ultimate Pool app. It's also on Viaplay and a number of other stations around the world. Let's move on. Let's talk about the Miniseries in Daventry, which happened last weekend, which we were all at, actually. You were there with your podcast. I was there commentating, and you were there supporting your wife, Chris. So we can all talk about, actually, the Miniseries is an event that, for whatever reason, and I think there's a few, it's just become one of the most enjoyable events to actually be at from an atmosphere-wise. There's a great spirit amongst the players. Obviously, they all want to win, but there's friends that have been friends for a long time in the seniors that haven't seen each other for a while, and they catch up. And then the women also have a massive... there's a big family feeling amongst the women as much as they try and beat each other on the table. Off the table, they support each other. And the extra exposure they get given at the mini-series, it just creates a great atmosphere. We've had two this year. I've enjoyed both of them immensely. How did you find it, Chris?
Yeah, brilliant, to be honest. I go up there, as you said, to support the wife. We take our daughter up there because she loves going away to a hotel for the weekend so we can have a swimming pools and support mummy. So, she really enjoys it as well. And as you say, I think the atmosphere is really, really, really good up there. Probably epitomised by the 6 red shootout we saw between Vicky Lomax and Holly Can. Because the atmosphere, I thought, as I was watching it, I've never seen an atmosphere like that, and I'd love there to be an atmosphere on the Pro Series, sort of, half as good as that, to be honest.
Did you find yourself in the crowd for that one?
Sadly not, no. My wife was down there supporting Holly because she's a teammate in the Suffolk County team. So, yeah, I was in the room watching it on the app.
Yeah, I was in the commentary box for that one. It was a great spectacle. One of my favourite 6 red shootouts we've had, actually. Just the atmosphere that you get from a crowd like that was brilliant. And Scott, you were there on the podcast table all weekend long with Dan Wells. And the way that it's set up as well, podcast table is right there. You walk in the venue and everybody wants to go out there and have a bit of fun on that table. And you like to you and Dan have a good fun with everybody there and enjoy it.
Yeah, and we get to witness the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of 6 red shootout times quite a lot of the times. I think, and kind of it's given me quite an insight into how different people, say, for example, approach the 6 red shootout. Listen, this is one thing about Ultimate Pool events. They're not just single-layered events where you just turn up. If you want to play, you play. If you want to watch your mate play, it's different. It feels like it's a little bit more of an event. And having things like the podcast table at these events, I do think it helps. If you're at a loose end, you might want to come and have a chat with Dan or I. But yeah, it's great fun. They are just such fun events, and to be honest, they're family friendly events as well, which is exactly what you want to see in the pool world.
It is. Well, let's deal with the winners, because we did have four winners. There was a women's series, a seniors series, and then obviously they split, and so you had 2 plates as well in the seniors and the women's event. And Emma Cunningham made it 16 out of 16 wins in the mini series, and she took down the title once again. That's her second consecutive at the mini series. 6 red shootout over Lucy Smith. Didn't think she was going to have to go via a 6 red shootout, but fair play to Lucy. She fought really hard to come back into it and take it to a 6 red shootout, which I know for a fact Emma did not want to take part in. We just talked about it. She's one of the players that hasn't really embraced it, hasn't practiced it, and didn't want to do it. But actually, she did a pretty good time. Let's show you her effort in the 6 red shootout whilst we're talking about it, because I haven't done the full stats on it, but I'm pretty sure it's the quickest ever in the women's series. A time of 35 seconds to beat. And what do you make here, Chris? Probably slightly overhit the break?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of adrenaline, but potting the ball helps. The ball that did go into the bulk end has obviously come down and sat quite nicely over there near the middle pocket. So, if you're going to overhit it by enough that ball comes back down to the end of the table, because I think if you do end up with a ball in the bulk area, generally it sort of adds a good 5 seconds onto your time. But Emma looked really composed, took them out really well, and that time is going to be probably 70-80% of players on the Pro Series.
Yeah, absolutely, and obviously could be a little bit quicker if she had to. She was composed towards the end because she knows that she had the time to beat. I guess, let me ask you this way, Chris, as well. If you could never want to win via a 6 red shootout because you don't want to have to go through it, but when you do go through it and you win via it, is there more of a buzz from doing it?
Yeah, definitely. It's the same as when you're obviously the World Cup's on at the moment and you watch the matches. We're just in the knockout stage, obviously, and if a team's sort of 3 or 4-0 up, with sort of 10 minutes to go, the outcome. The final whistle goes and the players sort of shake hands. It's everyone's known the result for quite a long time. Whereas if there's a penalty shootout and someone gets through, the celebrations are jubilant. Everyone's going nuts. And it just means a lot more. It's exactly the same. You've just got through a match, but it just means so much more. And everyone watching is more excited as well. And I think that's what the 6 red shootout brings to pool. That's why I love it so much.
Yeah, a really good analogy, actually. Like that. Might use that again. Emma Cunningham, Scott, I mean, she came to the last mini-series, which a couple of months ago now, and just said that she wants to enjoy her pool again. She'd put too much pressure on herself. She wasn't enjoying it. She did enjoy it. She played well. She won. Okay, she didn't go as well in Ireland as she wanted, but she still made the semi-finals of the World Championships. So let's not be too down on the World Championships, because a semi-final is nothing to really, it's definitely something to a good achievement to get that far. But she's back here, gone pretty much flawlessly through the tournament again. Emma Cunningham's back.
She is. I sat and had a 2-hour conversation with Emma in Daventry. And I can honestly, hand on heart, say that the big thing that I took away, and we've spoken about it so many times on the show in regards to Emma, it's always felt a bit awkward because we've spoken about Emma as if she doesn't look like the same Emma. She's not acting as if she's the same Emma. Well, I can tell you, after the conversation I had with her in Daventry, she's hungry for it again. And that makes her very, very dangerous. If Emma plays it her best on the ladies series, there's not somebody's going to have to play very, very, very well to beat her, because obviously she's a class act, been there, seen it, done it, and to see her around the venue, the last 2 mini series events I've seen her, she's had a smile on her face, and I think that's worth a lot more than the ball, because previously she looked like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. So a massive congratulations to her, a massive well done, and it's great to see her back being the player that we know she is.
Yeah, absolutely. Great performance from Emma once again. And Chris, from your perspective, obviously your wife playing in the event as well. Do you agree with what Scott was saying? It's nice, not just from our perspective, as pundits, but from your perspective, from your wife's perspective, to see Emma back playing the game with a smile on her face.
Yeah, definitely. My wife and I know Emma, not brilliantly well, but well enough. And it must have been probably quite a difficult season for her in the Pro Series because she hasn't obviously won a qualifier as yet, but she's had really tough draws. And then she's had to play those games and then go into playing on the Women's Series. So it can't have helped her confidence, no matter how she played. Because losing never does really help your confidence, to be honest. So the Women's Series was completely different for her because she was starting from scratch. She had some group games and then got into the crux of the knockout stages. And it's always a little bit easier coming into a tournament, I think, when you can make a mistake and maybe lose a game in the group stages and still get through. Not that Emma did that, obviously, because she won everything, didn't she?
She did indeed. I take your point about in the Pro Series weekends where she's playing Pro Series and Women's Series. It's very difficult to be playing qualifiers in the pros and then go and play the women, because as much as people will say play the table, you do have to play the player a little bit, and you play the game slightly differently in the Women's Series than you do the Pro Series, because it's a slightly different level of player coming back against you, and you might take on more in the Pro Series than you would in the Women's Series. And that's maybe something that she's having to juggle with, and will be interesting to see how she goes in a week or so's time. And we'll talk about that in more depth nearer the time as well. Something to keep an eye on. But Emma Cunningham does manage to get her hands on her second Ultimate Pool trophy, the Women's Series from the Miniseries, and she takes down both this year. Okay, on to the seniors then. And Ronan McCarthy went in. He had won 5 straight tournaments. He was the favourite. He got taken down by Oli Bale. And he was not going to be the champion once again, which left the door open. Oli couldn't quite get there himself. He lost out in the semi-finals to Steve Singh. But it was Keith Brewer that got his hands on his first Ultimate Pool crown, winning the final against Steve Singh. He made the final last time out, losing out in a 6-road shootout to Ronan McCarthy. So Keith Brewer is a champion again. Scott, what do we make of that?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? There's absolutely no doubt, if you were to have spoken about Keith Brewer, 7 or 8 years ago and said, who's one of your first picks for the Hall of Fame, he would have definitely been one of the first picks. There is absolutely no doubt in the man's pedigree, the man's talent. He went through a whole year in the early 90s where he didn't lose a match in a tournament, so that should give you an indication in how good he was. Obviously, he never won the World Championships, which is obviously something that would have hurt him immensely, that he never managed to lift the big one. But it's difficult to ignore. There was a incident in his career that tainted his career for many people, and it's been a long road back for him to kind of win his credibility back from people within the game. There's absolutely no doubt in the standard of player that he is. And Simon, you and I spoke about it quite a lot in Daventry, just about how good a player he actually is. Was he as popular a winner as he would have been 15 years ago or 10 years ago? Probably not, but you cannot argue with the man's talent and the man's capability on the table. He is absolutely unbelievable. And for those who thought he wouldn't be able to adapt to international rules, this guy could adapt to any rule set. He's absolutely born to play pool, and he did deserve his win.
Yeah, no doubt. He's played in 2 Miniseries for the seniors events, and he's made 2 finals, won 1, lost 1. I think he had a point to prove. He came across. I interviewed him in the presentation there after the final, and he sort of said as much, that he had a point to prove. He felt that, as a few people said, that he couldn't win with this new rule set, and he was the first to say that he hadn't really embraced it. He didn't really like the change. Whether that's from a personal perspective, as it's more open, it's more attacking, or whatever. He's proved that he can win in any rule set. He's changed rules 4 or 5 times in his career, and he definitely had the bit between his teeth. He was very, very vocal after he won. very proud, obviously, quite rightly, of what he's achieved, but also very proud to shut a few people up who said that he couldn't. I don't know who those people are, but that's certainly what he said. So great to see from his perspective. Keith gets his hands on a trophy, and I hope we get to see him many more times as well. I don't think in his 60s now that he's going to do anything more than play the seniors events at these mini-series with Ultimate Pool. I don't see him getting any more involved with Ultimate Pool than that. That's certainly what he was saying. But I think it's still great to see it see somebody like Keith, who did do so well years ago, back winning titles again. I mean, how do you make it from your perspective, Chris? How much were you? I guess you weren't. Well, you obviously weren't playing because you're nowhere near his age, but you get my point that he's sort of a bit before your time as well.
Yeah, he was obviously one of the names that was touted about a lot when I was younger, as one of the best players in the world. I didn't follow his career hugely closely, really. And when I first started playing properly again, sort of 8 or so years ago, I think he was just more playing sort of local tournaments perhaps then, and was sort of on the wind down. But obviously the things he's achieved in his career, he's obviously a really good player, and getting to a final and winning on the seniors, it just shows that even though he's probably missing a few more pots than maybe he would have done in years gone by, his shot choice and his execution are still probably top draw.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to seeing how he gets on next year. Plate events, then let's quickly talk about those. If those aren't aware, the tournament's set up. In the women, there are 4 women in each group. Top 2 go through to the main event. Bottom 2 go through to the plate event after everyone plays everyone. Same deal in the seniors, but it's 8 players in the groups. They play 7 matches. Top 4 go through to the main, and bottom 4 go through to the plate. And in the plate for the women, Sophie Gibbs-Nichols won the plate event, beating Becky Watkins in the final. She won the doubles in Ireland with Katie Martin, and came here with some confidence. But it's a sort of double-edged sword, because you'll be disappointed not to make it through to the main event, but then obviously very proud to go through and win the plate event. It's still a trophy, and it's still a tournament to take down. So a strange one to sort of view, but I guess you have to take the positives out of that, Scott.
A win's a win, isn't it? The money in the bank's the money in the bank. It really is. I mean, you'd rather come away with something than nothing. But from Sophie's perspective, she would probably look back and say that there were a few matches that she probably should have won rather than lost. Becky Watkins, again, we commentated on her match. She had a very good chance to beat Harriet Haynes. On the Friday evening, didn't happen. But listen, it's good experience, and to pick any sort of trophy up at an Ultimate Pool event, you've got to be immensely proud, because it's a very difficult field every single time you go out there.
Absolutely, even into the plate event, and actually I think some players, can benefit from a run. I think Becky Watkins is a prime example of that. She should be very disappointed that she didn't make it through to the main event. She's ranked 9 on the women's series at the moment. Obviously a tough group in there with Harriet, but she's been knocked down to the plate event, but then a good run through to the final. She'd be disappointed that she didn't win the final, but you start spinning those positives from it, and actually the positivity of winning matches is huge. It's very, very good for Sophie to take down that title. In the seniors event, it was Roy Wyatt that won the plate event, beating Wayne Lanny in the final. We didn't get to see a huge amount of the seniors plate event, but very good win for Roy in that plate event. Let's update our scores on our picking battle, Scott, and some rare good news for you this week. You did manage to get one right. You picked Emma Cunningham, and you managed to get it back within 2 at 26-24.
I didn't. I'm being honest. I didn't pick Emma.
You didn't pick Emma. You did?
I picked Harriet. You're gonna have to take that point off me.
No, I went and checked. 100%.
Oh, did you check?
Yeah,
did I pick Emma?
Yeah, because we had the semi-final battle, Emma versus Amy. Because I picked Amy, you picked Emma.
Oh, okay. I'll take it.
Take it.
I'll take it. Thank you.
You take it. Yeah, you need it. Even if
I
you don't get it, you need it because you're in trouble. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about the Masters this week. More bad news for you this one, Scott, because there was a big favourite this week in the Masters. Stevie Dempsey went in And on paper, and this game isn't played on paper, the number 2 ranked player on the 1 year list. He's won 2 titles this year with Ultimate Pool. He was up against 3 challengers that were all struggling this year on the Challenger Series, and it looked like it could be a pretty comfortable night for the Irishman. But he came up short in the group final to Zach Shepherd, who makes it through. By far and away his best performance with Ultimate Pool, and we've seen him quite a few times. And we know he's a much better player than he's shown when he's been on Ultimate Pool on the main stage there. But for whatever reason, it's not happened for him. But this time he has found some form and actually played really well in beating Stevie. I think the fact that he missed Stevie, as in he got to play on the other side of the draw, gave him a nice way in. He got a good match victory there. Who did he play in the first one? He beat Scott Yardley. It got him some confidence going. Then he takes down Stevie in the group final. A big surprise, though, Scott.
Listen, I'll be honest, this is one of the rare occasions where I didn't mind losing, because I actually know Zach and he's a really nice guy, and he's been on my podcast a few times with yourself, Simon, to preview some Ultimate Pool events. Listen, he's always been a decent player, and he's never done it on the Ultimate Pool stage. So to see him do it, I'm not going to begrudge him that. Fair play to him. Good luck to him, and I'll buy him a pint in Blackpool to say well done.
Even though he's potentially put you a step closer to the ocean.
Fine.
Yeah, Chris, does this show though? I mean, it's the number 2 player with Ultimate Pool. Obviously on the 1 year list. He's won 2 titles this year as Stevie Dempsey. We're playing races to 8, so it's a decent length match, and he's up against 3 guys that are in the mid 100s on the challenger rankings. Does that show us that there is such a huge strength and depth in this game? And obviously the elite will always stand out over the long run, but in a one-off night, races to 8, it's tough.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well done to Zach. I get on well with Zach and all the Welsh boys. It was good to see them out at the World Championships a few weeks ago and catch up with those guys. But yeah, Zach's well capable, as you guys know. He's played a lot of Chinese 8-ball a few years back. He's always been on the pool scene, but he's got a young family, I think, now, and probably pool and practice has taken a bit of a back seat with regards to the admin that he does for the Welsh Pool Federation. But he's always been really capable. He's got a good cue action. He's got a solid base. He's got a good understanding of the game. He watches a lot of pool. And for him to rattle off sort of 10 or 15 frames in a row, dishing, would not be a surprise to me at all. So, yeah, it does show the strength and depth, definitely.
Yeah, I'm really pleased for Zach as well, because we have seen him out there on that stage a number of times, and he just hasn't, we do know the level he can play at, and he hasn't turned up, and he'll be the first to admit that. And that for me was the biggest reason why I even though I picked him this week, I thought he was the stronger of the three challengers to Stevie. I didn't expect him to sort of turn up and play as well as he did, and you have to give him a huge amount of credit to turn up and play really, really well and take it to one of the best players in the world. So congratulations to Zach Shepherd. You move on to the second stage of the Masters. And let's just quickly update. So we gave you a point on the previous one. I'll literally just take it straight back off you or give myself another one. On our picking battle, I am now 3 clear once again. It's not looking good for you. It's not looking good for you at all. Okay, let's have a look at what we got coming up next week in the Masters, because it continues on Wednesday night at 6:30 on Ultimate Pool TV. Phil Harrison will take on Carl O'Donoghue. What a match that is. Probably the best first round match of the whole of the Masters. And Ricky Jones takes on Tom Church before the 2 winners play each other. Carl O'Donoghue just been announced as an Ultimate Pool professional and one of the best players in Ireland, and Phil Harrison, one of the best players of all time, even though he's not having the best of runs with Ultimate Pool. That is a massive, massive match. Can't wait for that one, Scott.
It's unbelievable, isn't it? And you've got to pick first, which makes it even worse. But if you look through the group, another player who can really play in that group is Ricky Jones. Yeah. He's had a by his own high standards, and he would tell you this himself, he's had a terrible time of it on the Challenger Tour, but that's a reflection of kind of the strength and depth on the Challenger Tour, but he can play. So he could be he's a very dangerous quantity in that group. But listen, Simon, I can't wait I know who you're going to pick. Please pick who I want you to pick.
I haven't made my mind up yet, so the fact that you know who I'm going to pick is a tough one. But I agree with you, actually. I really like Ricky Jones. I think he's fantastic. I think that his match versus Tom Church is actually a really enjoyable match as well. I think the whole night, it's got a really good vibe to it. Obviously highlighted with Carl versus Phil. It's going to be fascinating to see how Carl gets on. Also fascinating to see how Phil gets on, because he's been really struggling with Ultimate Pool. The reason I'm going to go for Phil over Carl is simply because Carl's coming in with a big reputation. It's his first time playing with Ultimate Pool, and he's going to want to really... We saw it with Tom Cousins when he came in. It took him a while to sort of settle down in his first tournament, and I think he can't afford to do that against Phil Harrison. And I think Phil's going to be putting the time in. Big Pro Series weekend coming up as well. I think it's a good time for Phil to play, and he can turn up. He knows what he has to do, and I'm going to go for Phil Harrison for that reason.
To be fair, it's decent reasoning, and you know Phil has struggled by his own high standards over the last season, but we did see little glimpses of brilliance in the Players' Championship from Phil. If I'm being honest, it's probably the best he'd played for a long time with Ultimate Pool. But you know, listen, and this is no disrespect to any of the other people in the group. It's a 2-horse race. I'm going to go Carl O'Donoghue. I'm so excited to see what he can bring to Ultimate Pool. He's an absolutely terrific talent, born to play on the stage, and I think that he will edge a thriller with Phil and then go on to win it.
Yeah, I think it could be a thriller as well. He's a very entertaining and enjoyable player to watch. Can't wait to see him make his debut on Wednesday, and I'm going to be in the commentary box for that one as well. So really, really looking forward to it. Chris, I'll let you off picking in the pairs, because you're obviously going to be playing the winners of it. I'm not going to let you off in the Masters, because you'd have to win your group and then win the second group. So we're not going to let you off. You're going to come on. I want you to have a pick here. Who's winning this week's group in the Masters?
Really tough, as you guys have said. I don't know how much Carl's been playing, to be honest. Haven't seen his name pop up in any tournaments recently, probably for the last year or two, so I don't know what sort of time he's been putting in. Phil, by his own admission, has probably struggled on the arena table quite a lot this year with getting to grips with the cue ball and the pace of the table. And a little birdie told me that the actual arena table was reclothed only a few days ago, so that might have an adverse effect on Phil. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if one of the guys from the other side of the draw, Ricky or Tom, whichever one of those guys wins, I wouldn't be surprised if they win through, to be honest.
I don't know about you, Scott. There felt like a lot of sitting on the fence there. There was some very good points made, but no actual name was picked.
Simon Webb. Yeah, but he sounded like Simon Webb on a Monday night. I'm going to sit on the fence and be everybody's friend. Like literally. You made
very, very good points, but no player was picked. But we'll let you off because you are in the competition.
You need to go into politics, Chris. Oh, Ricky Jones, he's made a pick.
We got one out of him. We got one out of that. Okay, so likely then that Tom wins. Tom Church will win, because none of us have picked him. So that is Wednesday night though at 6:30. Yeah, good luck, Tom. Okay, we were talking about Carl O'Donoghue. He is one of the wild cards. Ultimate Pool, a big string of wild cards being announced at the moment as the tour expands in 2023. As well as the wild cards, we're going to have 16 challengers come up. We've also got the leading women's series players going to come across as well. So there's a lot going on, and they have announced 3 more wild cards this week. The first one is another one from the World Snooker, another snooker star, and it is Stephen Maguire. Really looking forward to seeing Stephen come over and play. It's fantastic to see so many snooker players showing an interest in pool. Absolutely fantastic. It's got a really another massive name coming across for next year.
Yeah, listen, there are some people, and I'm going to be honest, that I've read on social media that aren't happy with the snooker players coming across. And I think that it's important that kind of we talk about that for a second. And they're saying that the snooker players are preventing people from getting an opportunity to play on Ultimate Pool. Now, let's just put that into context. I think there's been 5 snooker players announced for Ultimate Pool. So how many pro slots are there? Is 96 next season?
Yeah.
So if you think about that as a percentage, it's not even 10% of the professionals next year. Unfortunately, what has happened, and kind of the guys who have commented on social media have kind of proved Ultimate Pool's point to an extent, that they are quick to notice the snooker players that have been announced, and they've paid less attention to the pool players that have been announced over the course of the last several weeks. Now, Ultimate Pool are obviously trying to build something here that's going to last for a very long time, and that's going to, give us decades of entertainment, as opposed to a quick fire piece of entertainment for a couple of years. Now, if by putting some snooker players into pool, that encourages people who might not normally watch pool to tune in and stay and enjoy and love the show, then surely that can't be a bad thing. And for Stephen Maguire, he's a player with an incredible pedigree, Rolls-Royce Q action, a little bit lacking in the temperament department, if I'm being brutally honest. So if, I'd love to see Carl Morris pull some of his mind games against Steve Maguire, because I don't think he'd react well. So from my perspective, I'm really excited to see him. He's a class act. You don't win the tournaments he's won, and you don't get to the single table setup at the World Championships unless you're an absolute class act. And listen, I'm absolutely delighted to see Paul. Paul will prove that pool isn't just a game that a lot of snooker players think it is, which is an easy game. What's going to happen is when they get out there and start realising that it's a lot more than potting a few balls, they'll start having a little bit more respect for the game, and that's only a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. A lot of people, the phrase you hear is that pool's a game for bad snooker players is complete and utter nonsense. My background was in snooker, and it took me a while to actually understand that pool's a puzzle that you need to work out. And yeah, it's now a puzzle I absolutely love. I find it absolutely fascinating. Chris, from a player's perspective, what's it like with the knowledge now that we've got 5? We're not just 5 snooker players, we've 5 top snooker players as well coming across and going to be taking you on next year. Are you excited?
Yeah, definitely. I can't wait to see how they get on, to be honest. Just like any other pool fan, I'm really looking forward to seeing if they can transition and how they get on. And obviously from a player's point of view, such as myself, who won't be hugely known, but hopefully if Ultimate Pool takes them, could be in the future. If I can get drawn on the arena table against a top snooker player and do the business, then, that's how pool will get out there, hopefully.
Yeah, get your name out there. Taking on the likes of Stephen Maguire or Mark Williams out there on the main arena table. It's got to be a pretty cool way of doing it. Certainly, bring a few fresh faces to the sport, a few new viewers to the sport. Big fans of Stephen, big fans of Mark Williams, and so on and so forth. Should be very interesting to see when 2023 comes around, which is coming around pretty quick now. Okay, so we've got 2 more wildcards to announce, or 2 more wildcards were announced this week. Drew Hughes, who is a professional on another tour, he comes across the Welshman. Drew, I've had a few good games against him myself, actually. He's a good player. Actually, probably a highly talented player that maybe hasn't quite had the dedication to really do his talent justice, because he's a very, very talented ball player. And when he turns up and he's on, he can, watch out. He can beat anybody in the world, but probably isn't as consistent as he could be. But coming across to Ultimate Pool, it might just give him the bit of momentum that he needs, or the bit of a kick up the butt that he needs to actually put that time in and really come across and put the effort in. I'm very excited to see Drew come across. Your thoughts, Scott?
Drew's a quality player who I've seen up close. Listen, for these guys who have come across from other organisations, what's going to happen is it's one or two things. They're going to walk in, see the sheer size and scale of an Ultimate Pool event, which is, unlike anything that they've ever played upon. They'll walk into that arena and it will do one or two things. It will either be the biggest motivation that they'll ever have in their life, or they'll crumble under the pressure of the spotlights. But either way, it's going to be interesting to see. But you're absolutely spot on. One of the very few times I'm ever going to agree with you. Drew Hughes is a talent who just hasn't fulfilled his full potential.
Yeah, maybe the ultimate pool stage is the stage to do it on. I'll come to you in a minute, Chris. Let me announce, because there's another Welshman is the third wild card that got announced this week, and it is Luke Sanjis, who was also on another tour. But more than that, he was also top 8 in that other tour as well. So he really is a talented pool player. Cool hand Luke comes across. Looking forward to seeing Luke play. Chris, your thoughts on having Luke and Drew come across?
Yeah, I've seen both playing lots of tournaments over the last 2 or 3 years, so they've been heavily involved. Not sure how much time and effort both put in between those tournaments, but I've seen both go deep when I've been checking through scores, so they're obviously both really good players. I've never played either of them, but I saw them both, I think, on the Supreme Series 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was. And if they paid their entry fee to play on that, then they obviously thought they were good enough. So they'll probably be great additions to the pro ranks.
Yeah, Luke's a player we've seen make pro finals. You know, he's definitely a player that has gone really well in the past. Scott, a player you're excited to see come over?
I'm really excited to see Luke play. He's a very talented player, and I think that he's one that will enjoy the pressure and will enjoy the spotlight. And this is the other thing: the guys who are coming across from other organisations, they're quite often leaving kind of protected places where they are to come and start at the bottom at Ultimate Pool. So you've got to take your hat off to him, and you must have a lot of self-belief if you're prepared to, you know, be somewhere that's a little bit more comfortable, where perhaps the competition isn't as fierce, and put yourself into the shark tank of the Ultimate Pool Pro Series.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. You know, we're seeing that, you know, in particular with Luke Sanjis, who, you know, is right up there in the rankings, and you've also John McAllister, who's even higher. You know, we're talking about a top 4 player there. You know, they're obviously, you're coming from a position of being protected and, you know, comfort zone, whatever you want to call it, to come across and actually put yourself up against the best players in the world, and you're starting from the bottom again and having to fight your way up. I think that tells a lot about what Ultimate Pool are trying to do right now, and it's really exciting to see. From a broadcaster's perspective, from a fan of the game's perspective, I just want to see the best players in the world all taking each other on under one roof, and it's great that we're sort of getting as close as we ever have done, certainly for a while. So very, very excited to see these guys come across. I think that's just about it for this week's show. Well, I say it's just about that. It's just about it, Scott. I'm not going to let you off that easy, because we did have a little bit of a game this week, didn't we, in Daventry? We're not going to show any footage of it because it wasn't the best that you've seen. But you wound me up pretty good. I don't want to let on, but you got me going. You're like, you're a former England player. You're a former pro. I'm just a nobody. You can't lose this and all that. You know, because of the way I played the first frame, that I was not prepared to lose it. I was fudging you to death because I couldn't risk losing. But after you missed a simple ball in frame 2, I thought, oh, can't lose now, and cruise to a comfortable 5-0 victory. So just want to get that on the record, 5-0 under pressure.
Can I interject? For those who have ever kind of came to the podcast table, had a bit of fun, will know that I'll never be a professional pool player. I don't ever profess that I'll ever be anything close to that. But I do like to go for my shot, so I will take anything. I don't really play safe. It's not my game. Now, if I were to tell you that the first frame lasted for approximately 40 minutes, and it's international rules, how is that even possible? The second frame was about 25 minutes. How is that possible? If we were on a match clock, it would have finished 1-0 to Simon. That is how dour the way he played was. I don't think you took one 4-ball finish out in 5 frames.
Yeah, you play the player, don't you? You play the player. You play the match.
Exactly.
I mean, Chris,
that's what I'm saying.
Back me up, Chris. You play the player.
He had chances, Chris.
You do.
The best chance you had, Scott, of winning was me taking on a low percentage finish and then you mopping up. So I just wasn't going to allow it to happen.
It's beautiful, but I managed to get into your head to that point when you had to be Cliff Thorburn all afternoon. Honestly, it was boring. People fell asleep watching. I was like, come on, Simon, let's give them some entertainment. And you were like, absolutely not. This will not be entertaining at all. So well done. You proved your point. I'm really happy for you. You get to take that home with you. I'm really happy.
I'm not sure if you know this.
Go on.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know this, Scott, but you weren't the only Ultimate Pool staff member that Simon took on that weekend, and he wasn't altogether successful in his other venture.
Who did he play again?
Didn't play anyone else.
He might have played Simon Powner, our photographer.
Oh, I did, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did you get on?
I gave Simon an 8 start to 10, and it was all going rather well up until the fact that your co-host, Dan Wells, started coaching him and telling him what shots to play, and then he realised that he actually could pot a ball. And, with a little bit of coaching, and all credit to him, he managed to beat me 10-8 in the end. So, yeah.
And this is the Simon Powner who, until this year, had never. If you showed him what a snooker cube was, he wouldn't know what it was. That guy.
Yeah.
Oh wow! Well done, Simon.
Yeah. No, I'm really pleased for him. I am really pleased. Gritted teeth and all that, but that's what just shows a little bit of coaching can do. Get a little bit of help. Chris, thanks for bringing that up, mate. We might not invite you back on the show if you keep bringing up stuff like that too often. Well, on that bombshell that we're not going to invite Chris back on the show, that is the end of the show. So, Chris, all joking aside, great to have you on the show. Congratulations on coming through on Monday in the pairs. Really looking forward to seeing you in finals night. Before that, we'll see you at the Pro Series in a week or so's time. So good luck at the Pro Series. We'll see you there, and we'll see you on the pairs as well. Scott, as always, thank you very much for joining me. It's always a lot of fun having you here, and thank you for getting your picks wrong, because you're edging ever closer to the ocean in a week or so's time. That is it. We'll be back next week on Ultimate Pool Extra. We're going to preview the Pro Series that is coming up. Lots going on next week, so there'll be a lot going on in that show. But make sure you tune in on Monday for the pairs and the Masters on Wednesday. Both great shows. We'll see you on those, and we'll see you on Extra next time.